The metal of the Econoline hissed and groaned around them, as Miria hosed it down over and over again with the Arakeen bottle, even her usually long, straight hair curling in the intense heat and humidity. Occasionally she would pause, releasing the spell for just an instant to aim it into the van and hose down Kale, who was beaded with sweat, then add a splash of chilled water to the squid's bag. In those brief moments of respite, he would look through the rearview mirror and see the massive contrail they were leaving behind them. A long, straight trail of white cloud, shockingly pale against the storm of ash, dust, and embers that perpetually roiled above them. Occasionally, feeling miserable, he would attempt to adjust the aim of the air conditioner, a device he had had great hopes for and great disappointments. But the icy chill of the Arakeen bottle was the only relief they got. His only hope for reprieve, the slowly tilting tentacle club of the appendage sticking out of the squid's bag, dipping painfully slowly as they got closer and closer to their destination. You know, I once stood at the foot of an active volcano, and I don't think I've ever felt this hot.
I have. Once.
Really? Where were you?
Hiding from scanners in the coronosphere of a star.
I don't know whether to feel better or worse about that. Miria smiled wickedly as she turned the bottle on Kale, and had the satisfaction of watching him wick water from his mustache, and scoop his sodden and ridiculous roundlet cap out of his face.
Look, we may as well enjoy it while it lasts.
Enjoy it?
Look at it this way. Here we're only on the plane of fire. Our next stop is the land of the dead.
Kale drummed his fingers on the steering wheel for a moment and thought. You make a fair point, and I don't know if I like that you're right. Welcome to Swords Against Madness, an experiment in gonzo storytelling and solo role-playing. I'm playing a solo game of swords and wizardry, amplified by other classic role-playing games like Traveller, and accompanied by solo role-playing tools like the Mythic Game Master emulator. First I play the game, then I turn it into a psychedelic sword and planet audio drama for your entertainment. Swords and Wizardry is based on the original 1974 through 1977 rules to Dungeons & Dragons. It is trippy, fast-paced, and lethal, just the way I like it. There will be no protection for player characters when the dice decide that their number is up. But I do keep the story PG, or at least what passed for PG in the 1980s. If you didn't see it in Temple of Doom, Goonies, or Gremlins, you won't hear about it here. So reload that three-bladed sword. Get comfortable in your studded leather kirtle or your chainmail bikini. Fire up the wizard van. It's time to get weird. The Econoline continued its strange journey across the sky, cutting a pale furrow through the air, stark in contrast against the roiling, sparking red, orange, and black of its clouds. Water dripped perpetually down off of it, evaporating long before it hit the ground. Through haze, steam, and heat shimmer, it was hard to see anything before they were right on top of it. Clumps of black rocks, glowing red fissures belching smoke, crumbling basalt ruins, and churning geysers all seemed to emerge out of the shimmer ahead of them suddenly, and vanish just as swiftly. Miria and Kale took turns casting spells into the crystalline matrix on the ceiling to keep the vehicle afloat. There was an unspoken anxiety between them. What if they ran out of spells before they reached the next gate? Would the tires of the Econoline survive contact with this ground? And would they, touching down on a pale desert of ash and salt, be able to survive staying in a metal box for a night? Worse yet, they were constantly reminded that this place was not entirely desolate. Several times they caught glimpses of a great metal city, its reflections carried on mirages so that they couldn't be sure what direction it truly was, nor how close. The city had shimmering walls of obsidian, and towers and minarets made of brass. They spotted gardens full of strange plants sporting metallic petals and inner embers, and vast open saunas from which pillars of steam arose. Occasionally in those glimpses they would catch a figure, something huge, muscular, red-skinned, only resembling a human in the vaguest of terms, and far too closely resembling Yongu and his ogre Magus kin for Miria's taste. Here and there in the desert below them they could see places where hot springs and geysers were surrounded by small metal domes, or collections of gigantic pots. And the longer they streaked across the sky, the more they felt eyes upon them. The distinct feeling of being watched by beings who do not think you belong. In time, Miria's cheerful banter faded. They turned off the 8-track. And they rode in all the silence they could muster, given the eternal hiss of cold water on hot steel. Time and space have little meaning or little value on the plains. Each world they could visit would have its own tempo, its own speed. Some, like Muspellsheim, had no rising or setting of the sun. The world was lit by its own embers as it perpetually cremated itself. Only beings who lived there and were attuned to its rhythm could tell time by the eruptions of certain volcanoes, the blasting of certain geysers, or the swirling of certain hellish winds. As they understood this, Miria set the clock on the dash to 12 o'clock when they went through the portal, allowing them to estimate how long the spells they cast would last, and how long they had been streaking across the fiery sky. And so they recalled it was on the 4th hour when the storm changed character. They were just flying over some hoodoos when there was a peal like cracking rocks and distant thunder. The ashes and embers above them began to swirl and crackle, bolts of red lightning leaping from the ashen desert up into the cloud. Kale put his foot down, attempting to put on speed, but the vortex seemed to follow them. And then came the roar of fire just off to their right side. A pillar of flames 100 feet tall leapt down from the sky. It simultaneously flickered and curled like a bonfire, and twisted like a tornado. As it closed, it left a trail of molten slag on the ground where it touched, and then a shape began flickering in its ever-changing form. At first there was a feminine head, a sensuous face formed of white-hot flame. Tresses of orange flame rippled from the top of her head down onto the suggestion of white-hot shoulders. It parted its lips to speak in a tongue of hot hissing and crackling, cinders dripping from her lips. And then the face collapsed again into a pillar of flame, which closed itself into a ball and reshaped itself into a voluptuous female form. It danced sensuously towards them for a moment, clad in heat shimmers and smoke. And they swear they could hear in the hiss and roar of the flames the suggestion of playful laughter. And then it shifted again to a vaguely anthropomorphic figure of flames 20 feet tall. A searing limb reached out, taking a more feminine form again as it made a grab for the van. Kale pulled away as hard as he could before the fingers could close around them. What is it? What does it want?
I don't know. I've never seen anything like it before.
Well, ask the creature in your head. Kale swerved again to avoid the colossal hand of flame.
All-knowing. Any idea what this is or what it wants?
The elemental's consciousness is too alien to yours to understand. You need only know that it wishes to consume you for pleasure.
Nothing good. Punch it!
Hi, I'm Jon from Tale of the Manticore.
Robin from Stories from the First Watch.
PJ from A Wasteland Story and the Solo Role Players podcast.
Simon from Legend of the Bones.
Brian Rideout from Swords Against Madness.
Carl from The Lone Adventurer.
And I'm Trevor from Your Story Will Be Different.
And with our solo role-playing audio,
Narrative,
Actual play.
drama powers combined,
We are the Solo Role Players Podcast Network.
Usually accustomed to delving the depths,
scouring the desert,
Surviving the wasteland,
or facing the dragon alone.
this time we have teamed up to bring you a curated collection
of the best,
highest quality,
Most dramatic.
and diciest.
Solo roleplay podcasts in the world.
there are dozens of us.
So if you're looking for your next solo role-playing adventure,
roll over to soloroleplayersnetwork.com.
Sample and subscribe to something that takes your fancy.
And discover your new favourite solo role-playing podcast.
See you there.
Miria and Kale find themselves up against a fire elemental. Elementals to me are one of the more fascinating monsters in the D&D canon. They seem like the perfect thing for a wizard to be able to summon and throw at his enemies. A creature of pure water, pure fire, pure earth, or pure air, possessed of incredible strength and agility, and only something you can fight with your wits or with magic. But at the same time, I've always thought that they are underserved and underdeveloped. The elementals in most editions of Dungeons & Dragons really aren't all that interesting. They're a living bonfire, or a creature made of rock, or a living wave, or a little whirlwind that does things. They're really not much more than a spell that does its thing over and over again. In the Beckme version of D&D, they were given a little more dimension. In that rule set, they were said to have an intelligence when they were on their own plane, but drawn into the material plane they become confused, numb, and obedient, in effect making them mindless. All the interesting personality and characters are given to what we call para-elemental creatures like mephits and azers, sliffs, undines, water weirds. But why shouldn't all elementals have some kind of personality? Why shouldn't you want to summon an earth elemental not just because it's strong and tough, but because it is patient and thoughtful? Why shouldn't you want to summon a water elemental not only because it is highly mobile and can douse flames, but also because it is intuitive and empathic? The canon of Western mysticism has always put certain traits on certain elements. Air is intelligent and creative, water empathetic and healing, earth patient and pennywise, fire passionate and sensual. And so that's very much where I'm going with my design for elementals at the moment. I want them to be alien, yes, but I want them to have some personality, their own motivations, even if those motivations are totally alien, capricious, and dangerous. And a rolling, shifting, ever-changing form really seems to capture that. I'm also drawing some of my inspiration from two of my favorite depictions of elementals outside of D&D. First, an old video game called Quest for Glory 2 Trial by Fire, in which your character must cleverly defeat 4 different elementals over the course of the first act of the game. Both the fire and water elementals take on a very feminine form in Quest for Glory. The fire elemental in that game whirls and dances across a courtyard and tries to embrace you as it burns you. And the water elemental dances playfully in a fountain, and when your character gets close, attempts to kiss you, which draws all the water out of your body, leaving you a lifeless husk. And at the risk of dating myself, I also enjoyed the way the elementals appeared in the very first edition of Magic the Gathering. The elementals depicted in the original MTG had a lot of personality in the artwork. Dan Frazier's Earth Elemental artwork depicts a squatting creature with a strangely judgmental face, shaped and posed rather like a sumo wrestler. The water elemental, a salty, bearded old man rising from the waves, taking hold of a fisherman's oar and looking up at him as he stands surprised in the boat, with an expression that seems both wise and mischievous. Richard Thomas's air elemental is a sneering, androgynous being, clutching something greedily to its chest as it flies out of reach, clad in a shapeless garment of swirling wind. And Melissa Benson's fire elemental, a voluptuous woman with a come-hither stare, her arms out wide as she emerges from a lava pool in a way much like you would expect a nymph to come out of a pond. These elementals had incredible character. And when I first started playing the game when I was 13, I was lucky enough to have gotten all 4 elementals in a starter pack in my first 3 boosters, and was very proud of my red-blue deck that would allow me to conjure any of the elementals. even though the infernal thing almost never won a match. Having thought this through and designed exactly how I wanted elementals to look, feel, and play in my campaign, all that was left was to figure out what this one wanted. And so I rolled on the main column of my random encounter table, and I got consuming. That conjured several images into my mind, like it drawing embers and ash from the sky, or maybe that it was chewing pieces of molten rock, or perhaps dancing in lava to draw in the heat. That sounded like a really cool encounter to me. Then I rolled for NPC reactions and got snake eyes. No, it was out to consume the player characters. Okay, so there's not much chance to showcase the elemental's personality this time round. At least it should be fun to watch.
It's time for battle!
The pillar of flame surged forward, one moment nothing but shapeless fire, the next looking like a large, aggressive woman reaching out her hand, and back again as if it couldn't hold its form in its excitement. As its fingers narrowly missed the back door of the Econoline, she brought her arm up high and lunged forward. Where Miria's skin wasn't already covered in burns, she could feel an intense heat wash over her as the hand came down and swatted the back of the van. The blow was intense. Kale cursed and fought with the wheel as he fishtailed through midair. A massive hand-shaped dent was left in the rear panel, full of smoke and blistering paint. And they watched in alarm as one of the rear tires began to emit a trail of purple sulfurous smoke. Trying hard to remember exactly what he read in the California Driver's Handbook, Kale battled the swerving of the van until he could bring it straight and pushed the accelerator even harder, putting on a burst of speed. But with a roaring of burning air, the elementals surged after them, nearly matching their speed.
Faster, Kale!
Miria seized the grab bar and pushed herself out the window of her door into a seating position. She pointed the Arakeen bottle, first sending a steady stream across the tire to make it stop smoking. Then she aimed at the elemental and unleashed a full torrent of water. The elemental howled as the water punched through her, sending up a wall of steam as it did so. Then Miria wrenched the bottle, swinging it like a colossal sword, cutting a massive furrow across the front of the elemental. And then the huge rent she left behind closed, although she could have sworn the elemental looked a little paler. Certainly when it had a face, its expression was furious. Encouraged, Miria slashed arcs through the air, fending the creature off with a gigantic sword of rushing water. In a graceful feminine form, the elemental wove and dodged between the slashes of water, but that slowed it down just as Kale managed to get the van into third gear. Despite having no traction, the engine roared. Finally, the huge, flaming form of the woman disappeared into the distance, shaking a blazing fist as they went.
I think it may have given up for now, but don't stop driving.
Look, I'll try, but this thing is still as much machine as magic, and it says the engine is overheating. You'd better get back on bottle duty fast. Once again, Miria set about cooling the van with jet upon jet of icy water. She watched with some sorrow and disappointment as much of the painting on the rear right panel was peeled away in the jets of water. The paint had been almost entirely seared off by the lightest of touches, leaving a mangled mess where once there had been a princess and some mermaids.
Thank the void that wasn't me.
The gate, when they found it, was impossible to miss. They certainly didn't need the squid pointing at it to tell them that this was a gateway to the land of the dead. A field of nicotania, nightshade, and mandrake, sprawled in a mix of purple and yellow flowers, emerging from a mire of damp ash. The plant life, though somewhat singed and sickly-looking, was a welcome change, and drew the eye slowly up the hill. At its peak was a massive graven skull of iron. It sat facing the sky, its jaw wide open. The eye sockets pools of steaming water that overflowed and dribbled down the sides of the skull into the ash. Moss and weeds spilled from the sides of the jaws. Looking down from above, they could see that the mouth opened into a deep cavern, lit by bioluminescent flowers and fungi. A pungent, earthy smell for once overpowered the scent of sulfur and ash that they had been breathing for hours. Are we ready for this?
I don't see how we could be, but let's do it anyway.
They gently pitched the econoline down, aiming it into the mouth and turning on the headlights. Behind the ivy clinging to the sides of this throat, they could see carvings, long strings of unfamiliar glyphs, unintelligible iconography. As they lowered themselves in, Miria cast her eyes on the clock on the dash, only to watch the second hand tick back and forth over a single second. Their noses were slowly filled with the scent of earth and stone, of dryness, dust, of mold, nicotania, and other night-blooming flowers. And then, at last, there was a light at the end of the tunnel, albeit pale. Their view at first was blocked as they slid down between gigantic iron ribs, but Kale pulled up in time to set the wheels down on soft, loamy material. They were in a cavern of sorts. Not too far off to the left, they could see a massive stone wall slowly arching up into the shadows above. Here and there stalactites, some as large as office buildings, dangled from the ceiling, rich with veins of fluorescent rock. Stretching out below them was a meadow of grass the color of old bone, gently curving down to a wide black river that slithered slowly through the heart of the cavern. Here and there the wreckage of stone structures stood up in the field, while in patches here and there, and especially along the riverbank, were stands of trees with silver leaves and pale bark. There was a dry breeze that came up the passage and ruffled the grass, carrying the smell of mold and mildew on the air. In other places, stands of gigantic fungus cast a gentle bioluminescence on the land around them. Bats flit about the ceiling like birds on a summer day. And somewhere off in the distance, Miria could hear the dry, rattling cough of a creature like a sheep that stood gaunt upon a hillside.
This is the plane of Stygia. In the local paradigm, it is the place souls go to await judgment before moving on to whatever reward or punishment awaits them based on their deeds. Be very careful. While it is based on the myths of the people of Orbos, it has resonance with much older underworld myths. Beings from a number of mythic underworlds may lurk here, and there may be unseen psychic perils.
As much as they wanted to be cautious, Kale and Miria were exhausted. The heat and the stress were wearing on them. Both were carrying sick worries about the condition of the econoline. It was all they could do to gently maneuver the van into a stand of trees and attempt to wipe out their tracks with a spray from the Arakeen bottle before they curled up together on the back bench seats and fell into a weary sleep. Swords Against Madness is played, written, and performed by Brian C. Rideout. Editing, mastering, and audio production were from Stormhead Productions. All sound effects are licensed from Pixabay. This episode features the voice talents of Jon Cohen, creator of Tale of the Manticore. The opening theme to this episode is King Edward by Mr. Smith, a Creative Commons by attribution song released by way of the Free Music Archive. It also includes the song Acidcore by Jumping Bunny, Country Rock by Litesaturation, Orchestral Nebula by Diogodelassivlavsmores, Jack the Lumberer by Alexander Nakarada, Slabfall by Vlad Annekov. Battle Metal by Top Sue. Awesome Pink Floydish Guitar Riff by Palle Knudsen. And Evidence by meegistudios, which are all released under a Pixabay license. I love hearing from my audience. Please get in touch with me. Find me on X at SwordsVMadness, or just email me at swordsvmadness@stormheadproductions.ca. And if you want to support the show, check out my many weird offerings on DriveThruRPG. Search for Death Trap Games. And until next time, roll high, play hard, and think weird. Thanks so much for listening.